So I'm going to make a proposal for how governance should operate. I look forward to talking to everybody else in the community to kind of make sure that this makes sense or tweak the proposal and get feedback and things like that. So before I make a proposal, the first thing I want to do is I want to say that I think there's basically two different things that you're trying to optimize with the governance process. So the first one you're trying to optimize, I'm going to call efficiency. And what this means is basically how hard is it for the DAO to get things done, right? Ideally, you want things to be efficient. If Pyth wants to list new price feeds or if Pyth wants to add new data providers, those processes shouldn't take too long. Now, the other thing you want to maximize, I'm going to call security. And I think there's really two aspects of security. One is maybe the obvious one, which is you don't want someone malicious to be able to come into governance and take things over or cause damage to downstream users or things like that. So that's an obvious notion of security. I think another notion of security is basically, does the governance process do the things that token holders wanted, right? There's some community of token holders, they have the ability to vote, but if you say, well, depending on how the process is set up, it may or may not do the same things that the people who have the tokens would have voted for. So I think those are the two objectives. And I think these objectives are kind of in tension with each other. And one way to think about it is you can just think about a couple different processes that you could use. And I think there's a spectrum whether they're efficient or secure. So the simplest process, which some DAOs use, is they subject everything to a full token holder vote. Now, this process is secure almost by definition because everybody votes on everything, so their will is done. But it is definitely inefficient. There's a lot of apathy usually for voters in these DAOs, especially if you have to pass kind of trivial proposals. So it tends to take a really long time to do anything, and it tends to be hard to even get the quorum together that lets you do anything. So this is kind of an inefficient process, though it is secure. On the other side of the spectrum, you could say delegate all the powers of the DAO to a single person, right? So this person would kind of be like a dictator. And a dictator would be efficient. Like whatever they wanted to do, they could do, but it wouldn't be very secure, right? If they decided they wanted to be malicious, they could very easily be malicious. So I think a good middle ground here is to create something that I'm going to call a council. And a council is basically a multi-sig where you have a number of members on the multi-sig, and there's some threshold where, as long as say 5 of 8 members vote for a proposal, it gets done. So what I'm going to propose we do is we create a couple of different councils and we delegate specific powers to those councils. And what's cool about the councils is that you can kind of adjust where they live on this trade-off based on how many members are in the council, what the threshold for approval is and things like that. So you have some kind of configurable parameters here that you can use to get the right trade-off. Oh, the other thing about councils is that you don't have to delegate all the powers to a single council, right? You can have different groups of experts who focus on different areas and delegate specific powers to those specific councils. And this is actually how some of the more effective governance processes that I've seen work. Like, for example, the synthetics governance process is based on having a couple different councils who focus on different areas. So that's kind of where we're taking inspiration for this idea. So I'm going to propose that we create 2 different councils. The first council I'm going to call the Pythian Council, and you can think about this like the Senate. So this council is going to have a pretty broad set of powers that they're going to exercise, and it's going to be kind of something that you want to be pretty secure. So the powers of the Pythian Council are they're going to be able to upgrade all of the programs related to the Oracle. So they're not going to be able to upgrade programs related to staking and governance because we want to make sure that staking and governance is more powerful than the council. But they will be able to upgrade programs like the Oracle program running on PythNet, like the Oracle program on Solana, the contracts running on different blockchains. All of that stuff will be under control of this council. Similarly, they'll be able to configure all of those contracts. So if you wanted to change the fees or anything like that, this council would be responsible. They will also have the ability to manage PythNet. So there's some actions that you can do on PythNet that these people will control. And finally, they'll have the ability to appoint the price feed council, which I'll talk about in a second. So the Pythian Council, they don't need to act frequently. It's not every day that you upgrade a program, but the actions that they take can be high stakes. So the people on the council need to be chosen carefully, and they ideally need to have, some contract development background so that they can actually understand the changes that are being made and evaluate them critically. So this council will be able to nominate the members of the price feed council, which will do sort of the more day-to-day operations. So the price feed council will be responsible for managing the price feeds that are on Pyth, permissioning the publishers who are publishing prices for those feeds, and also configuring the price feeds. So there's some fields like the minimum number of publishers associated with every feed that the price feed council will be able to control. So this council is more of a day-to-day operational council. Pyth adds price feeds all the time. It adds publishers to feeds all the time. So this council will be doing more actions. However, this council is less sensitive, right? The amount of damage that this council could actually do is much more limited than the other council. So that's my proposal for the two councils that we can create initially for the Pyth DAO. In the future, we could do more, right? So for example, once there's revenue coming into the Pyth DAO, we could make a grants council that takes a portion of the revenue and distributes it to grants to developers and things like that. So there's a lot of other ways that we can use this council idea, but I think these two councils are the ones that make sense for the initial version. So once we have these two councils, there's a question of how do we actually elect the members of this council? And my suggestion for this is that we run elections on some cadence, like say every 6 months. Maybe we should do it every year. Definitely open to thoughts on that. And what I suggest we do, at least initially, is we elect off-chain. So for example, like the Pyth Data Association can, collect nominations for members and collect kind of rough community vote from token holders. And then we can ratify the proposal on-chain. So basically, we'll pass a governance proposal that says, here are the members of the Pythian Council, and sets up the multi-sig and all that. And in the future, we could build some sort of on-chain election mechanism. I don't think it's necessary on day one, and I also think that it's nice to actually have the ability to experiment with different processes and things like that, in a lower stakes environment before we kind of commit to building something in code. So that's kind of my proposal for how we should run Pyth governance. I've talked a little bit about creating councils, kind of why I think councils are the right trade-off between security and efficiency. And I've suggested, how we set up those initial councils, talked about elections. Definitely looking forward to discussing with the community about this proposal and trying to figure out these social governance things. So please reach out if you're interested in having that conversation. Thank you very much for your attention.